You can be amazing, you can turn a phrase into a weapon or a drug. You can be the outcast, or be the backlash of somebody's lack of love. Yeah, or you can start reaching out. Maybe there's a way out of the cage where you live. Maybe one of these days you can let the light in. Show me how big and brave is. Say what you wanna say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave with what you wanna say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave. You know, she won't write you a love song, but she will write you a hella good piano rock album and a Tony Award-winning Broadway musical. And let's be honest, she writes pretty darn good love songs too. I think you might know who I'm talking about. Of course, one of the best singers, one of the best songwriters, one of the best singer-songwriters of our generation, the girl with a foul mouth and a golden voice, Sara Bareilles. Welcome to Pop Culture Catechism, conversations about music, movies, and the longings of the human heart. Let's get started. Have you ever been crushed? What do I mean by that? Have you ever been through an experience where you were so pushed down, so crushed, just so worn down from what life throws at you that you weren't sure you were ever going to be the same? In fact, you were pretty sure you were never going to be the same. How do you recover from that at those moments when you're not even sure how you're going to go on? How am I even the same person as I was before? I don't even know who I am after what just happened or after what I did. Well, Sara Bareilles, our topic for today, has so many songs about that, and I am super excited today to cover those topics with my new friend, Kiersten Lyons, who is co-host of the Crushed podcast, where they talk about just this sort of thing and just these sort of experiences, those liminal, those crux moments, those moments where life changes and it seems like it's trying to beat you down, but how do you, like a phoenix, rise from the ashes and move forward? So that's what we're going to do today. But before we get into it, I need to tell you a little bit more about this show. This is Pop Culture Catechism, where we talk about movies and music and pop culture and all the things and how that connects to our hearts and what God has put in our hearts and all those deep questions of life. My name is Mikey Tenney. I am a speaker and worship leader. I run this podcast, and I spent over a decade in Catholic high school, Catholic education, teaching high school theology, and also trying to make it as a rock star at night. And now I love to talk about pop culture and what it has to do with life, the universe, and everything. And if you want to support this show, you can go to popculturecatechism.com and become a patron. Our patrons, thank you so much, patrons. You are the ones that keep this show running. And there are 6 tiers of giving that you can choose from. Pick one that fits your budget, that fits your tithe, and support the show. And not only did you get to help out on awesome ministry, but you also get exclusive content. So each episode has exclusive content. Also, all the talks that I give when just as part of my speaking ministry, I record them and I put them in there. And only the people who are patrons of the show get access to them, and there's other more perks depending on your giving level in those tiers. For example, today, the exclusive content, after we're done recording, Kiersten and I are going to talk about Sara Bareilles' best love song. So if you're a patron, check that out after the show. And if you're not a patron, what are you waiting for? Go to popculturecatechism.com and sign up, and you can get that content through the Awaken app. The Awaken app has lots of exclusive content for patrons, but also it's a free app, and it has lots of free stuff for everyone. So you can go to theawakenapp.io or just search in the App Store, and there it's online Catholic community where we try to avoid a lot of the toxicity and drawbacks of some of the other social media platforms. And there's also a prayer library. There's a Christian music library, plus any shows that you're a patron of. You have exclusive content there for you as well. And it's also just a hub for all the great shows on Awaken Catholic. So thank you so much to our patrons who make this possible. And if you like this episode, if you know someone who's a Sara Bareilles fan, like this on YouTube and Facebook, subscribe on your podcast app, share this with somebody, take a screenshot, send it to them, just say, hey, I think you'd really like this, if you think somebody would get something out of this conversation. So thank you so much. And Kiersten, I'm really glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
My name is Kiersten Lyons. I'm an actress, a writer, a director, and now a podcaster. Mm-hmm. I was a TV actress in LA for 13 years, and then my heart just got broken so many times, and I needed to take a break. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know it was a break. I thought it was done. And God was like, haha, just kidding. I am going back into acting, which feels really, really scary,
Wow.
but really awesome too. My husband and I have a small little production company where we do branded content and stuff for brands, as well as I now host with my cousin and co-host. I created and host the podcast, Crushed the Podcast. And it's actually based on a solo show called Crushed. Why is it that the boys you like don't like you back? But my show is Crushed. Why is it that the life you like never likes you back? And,
all right. Yeah, it's super cool. I think I discovered it because I follow Claire McCallan, and I think you guys have worked with her a couple of times. I discovered, and I was like, "What is this podcast?" And I listened to it, and I was like, "This is really cool." Just like in-depth discussions about these moments in people's life that they have to kind of rise from the ashes, as I said. And I just loved your guys' banter. There's a really cool friendship, cousin connection, accompaniment sort of thing you guys got going on between you and your cousin. It's really beautiful, the relationship you have, and even some of the discussions you've had at the beginning of season 2, just about your faith journeys, it's just like, oh, this is a really beautiful thing on display, your relationship. So thank you for that. And in one of the first episodes I listened to, you started talking about Sara Bareilles, and I was like, ooh, I need them on my show, because I wanted to talk about Sara Bareilles for such a long time, but I was just like waiting for the right person to ask. And I was like, okay, now I know. Now I have to reach out. So yeah, we're ready to go. So tell us I will tell our listeners and our viewers, if you don't know who Sara Bareilles is, she has had 7 albums out by this point. She started with Careful Confessions in 2004, which I think was kind of self-released, because a lot of the same songs ended up on Little Voice, which I think is where most people started to know her from with I'm Not Gonna Write You a Love Song, and Many the Miles, and some of her first hits, Kaleidoscope Heart in 2010, The Blessed Unrest in 2013, which is what Brave is off of. And then she started getting into writing for musicals. She wrote the music for the musical Waitress, which has been huge, and on Broadway with her and Jason Mraz and lots of other cool people. And then she had Amidst the Chaos, her last album in 2019. And she's getting into TV. She's on this show called Girls 5 Eva, which is like about a girl group that like reunites. I think you've watched it, but I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet.
I've watched it.
Okay, good.
I very much
Do you recommend it?
I do. I really do. I think it's great. But I also will say that I think it hits a demographic that may not be your demographic.
Okay.
I don't know. It's definitely more for, I think, maybe upper millennials.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, so I often find myself listening to stuff and watching stuff that's not really from my demographic, but I don't know. I don't know what that says about me. But and she was also, I think a lot of people know her from Jesus Christ Superstar, which was broadcast on TV. She played Mary Magdalene opposite John Legend, who is Jesus, and lots of other cool people in that production. She seems like she can do it all. I think she's there are some people in entertainment who end up by the end of their career with what they call an EGOT, an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. And I think she's not quite there yet, but she's been nominated for all of those things except an Oscar yet, I think. But I think by the end of her career, she's going to be an EGOT. And that's like a very small number of entertainers. She's just like super talented across the board. So she's had nominations for 8 Grammys. She's only won 1, but she's been nominated for 3 Primetime Emmy Awards and 2 Tony Awards, and she's won at least 1 Tony, I think. But anyway, she's super talented, and happy to talk about her today. Kiersten, so tell me a little bit about what you love about Sara Bareilles.
I just love her so much. I think honestly, so I came to find Sara Bareilles from a guy I was dating who at the time I was dressing up as a Disney princess. Well, 20%, not a true Disney princess, but for little kids' birthday parties. Yeah. So you can't really say like I wasn't really Ariel. I was like a mermaid that looked exactly.
Yeah, I've had a number of actor friends do that.
Yeah. And he had found this song Fairy Tale, and it reminded him of me because I dressed up as princesses. And then I found her album and just fell deeply, deeply in love with her. And I actually, at the same time, I was kind of dating this guy. I was working in a restaurant, P.F. Chang's, and one of the guys that I worked with had been in a vocal group with her at UCLA.
Okay, cool.
So it was kind of like this whole world. And then I have another friend who's really close. Like just living in LA, it's just kind of like know a lot of people. So so I just have like a really big connection to her, like just through different people. And then her songwriting is just, it's me. Like it just feels it's very crushed. It's very idea of, you know, these things you want, you don't get, but how does that make you feel? Or people like kind of coming down on you and how, you know, your self-worth. And I also just love, honestly, she's honest. And on her show, she's like, hey, these are my wrinkles.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
Yeah.
And she, on Dak Shepard podcast, she talked about falling in love with her nose, which just, I just think she's a really wise person. I don't know where her spirituality is. She has a ton of themes in terms of, you know, spirituality, but I just love her. And I've gotten to see her at the Hollywood Bowl live doing Little Mermaid.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. And then at the end, Jodie Benson came out, and I worked with Alan Menken on a TV show. And so it was a moment of like, what is happening? This is so great.
That's awesome.
I feel like I have, and then one of my really good friends is a Today Show producer and looks exactly like Sara Bareilles. And so they always put them together, and there's like pictures of her all over it's just, I don't know. Sarah's just my girl.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, and I know she's connected with me and my wife in just our relationship and a lot of her lyrics and several of my I'm a musician, so I've and just different collaborators and friends of mine, especially like female piano based singer-songwriters, of which I'm close friends with a number of them, and all of them are just like, ooh, Sara Bareilles is like is their dream of like that is what I want to do. You know, I want to write these honest songs, but they have a little bit of an edge. There's like blues influence and jazz influence. It's and her voice is just out of this world. She can do everything from like Disney princess stuff to, you know, like one of her first tours was with Maroon 5. It's very, very like it's got that pop element, but it's also very blues influence, like that song Undertow or Morningside, especially on some of her early stuff, or even Saint Honesty off her last album, again with the honesty, but just such a blues influence, and the precision of her voice, like the melodies she comes up with, they're not just like single note. There's so many simple melodies in pop music nowadays, and hers are just all over the place. And she's like spot on. If she doesn't have perfect pitch, she's got to have like near perfect pitch. She's crazy, crazy talented. And even just like her vocal phrasing. Sorry, I'm a music nerd, so sometimes I get into the weeds a little bit on the musical technique. Okay, but so like even the way she changes from the beginning of the song to the end of the song with the chord structures and the way she sings things, it reminds me a lot of Adam Duritz from The Counting Crows. The way by the end of the song is different from the beginning of the song. But it's still, I think she's a lot tighter than he is. Like she doesn't just like kind of go off the rails like he does, but I don't know. I just think she's a consummate musician, and she's incredible. There's nothing she can't do. So, yeah. Anything else you want?
Funny.
Yeah, she's so funny. She's got such a foul mouth.
As a comedy writer and a comedian, I love her because she's so funny.
Yeah.
And as a musical theater major, she's such a musical theater dork.
Yeah.
You know, so she's very nerdy and also very witty.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think it's hilarious. She's got like such a foul mouth. Like she's always dropping the F-bomb. But it's like, anyway, I think she's great. I think she's great. So anything else before we get into some spirituality and some themes?
I just remembered this. My husband sat next to her dad on a plane years ago before she was like getting big, and he was just the proudest papa ever. Like he was so proud, and it was just, my husband was like, it was just so sweet to see this father who just loved his daughter, not only because she's this great singer-songwriter, but just because he was her daughter. You know,
that's awesome.
That's his daughter.
That's super cool. All right, well, let's start to look at some songs. So the first song I want to talk about, this is from Waitress, and I had heard this song before, but I never like dug into it until you recommended it. It's called You Matter to Me. Let's bring those lyrics up. So, well, first of all, that's what Sara Bareilles looks like, if you don't know. That's her rocking out on stage. So this song, You Matter to Me, this is from the Waitress musical, and the version that I listened to is her and Jason Mraz, which is just like a match made in musical heaven. I haven't done an episode on him yet, but it's going to happen at some point. So tell us about this song and why you love it so much, and what speaks to you in it.
So it's interesting. So I got to see Waitress on Broadway. I didn't get to see her. Joey McIntyre, though, was the male lead. So that was fantastic for my 9-year-old self. But there's something about this song. Okay, there's a twofold. I realized God has been trying to reveal to me over my whole life, but really over the last 1 to 5 years, that I really didn't believe that I mattered.
Oh.
as much as I thought I knew everybody else did, but there was like a deep wound in my heart that I didn't believe I mattered. And that's childhood wounds. And we talk a lot about that on Crushed. And, you know, God was like gently pressing on this wound. And he finally, about 9 months ago, finally was like, hey, this is your like big wound. This is the thing that kind of drives all your decision, is that you don't believe that you matter to me. And very soon after, like, I think within 24 hours, this song came on.
Wow.
And it just was like, I mean, it's probably the most powerful moment I've ever had with a song in terms of my relationship with God.
Yeah.
And what I love about it is it's two people having an affair. I mean, they're singing to each other and they're having an affair, which is also hilarious because I think God is hilarious. I think he's the best comedy writer ever. My crush started, the whole show started because my ex-fiance cheated on me.
Oh my God.
And so there's something that's why the solo show happened. It almost became a pilot at, which is like the first TV show at ABC, almost got sold to ABC, which is a whole nother crush moment. But it's just so funny to me that God was like, hey, guess what? I'm also going to throw some humor in there. And the redemptive quality of these two characters are singing to each other and they're so broken, especially the lead that Sara Bareilles, she created and she eventually played her on Broadway. I think that's what's so beautiful to me is that there's such a redemptive quality about it.
Yeah, there really is. And that idea that you matter. Like we are, and so often when we have trauma from childhood or abuse or betrayal from being cheated on or an affair or something like that, it can teach us the lesson and send us the lesson that we don't matter. And how could I have avoided this? Like really, maybe in some ways it's my fault. Like maybe I could have controlled that and maybe I could control it in the future when the truth of the matter is, we live in a world where God gave us free will and consequences. And like, sometimes that hurts and sometimes it's not fair. It's other people's fault. But we still matter. Right. And there's still a way out. Like this isn't the end, this trauma and this awfulness, this crushing that you're going through right now. And you still matter to me even in this. And I think that's the power of the cross, that Jesus is like, hey, like I've been there. I know exactly what that is like to be betrayed by the people that are supposed to love you, that said they'd love you, that said they'd never turn their back on you. And just a few days later, like betray you, leave you behind. I know exactly what that's like. And I'm here with you in it. And you matter to me. Like that's so powerful. Like I've had those moments, not with this song, but with other songs that spoke to me. And yeah, just you matter to me. Simple and plain. It's not much to ask from somebody. You matter to me. I promise you do. Like we need to hear it over and over again, right? You matter to me. You matter to me. You matter to me. And if we've gotten the opposite message from somewhere, like, there are people in our life that can give us that, but also like our relationship with God, like going back and just letting the love of the Father wash over us through prayer and community and sacraments and all the different avenues of grace he has for us. Yeah. Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
All this time I've been keeping my mind on the running away. And for the first time, I think I'd consider the stay. It's hard to stay after you've been hurt, right? Like, how do you learn to trust again after your fiance has cheated on you? Like, that's got to be a process.
It's a full process. I mean, there was a lot involved. Obviously, I mean, we talk about it a lot. We're big advocates for mental health, and whether that's a counselor, spiritual director, therapist. For me, I started going to Al-Anon, which is Friends and Family of Addicts.
Yeah.
And that for me was the biggest first step in acknowledging that I had an addiction, which is funny that it says it's addictive the minute you let yourself think. I had an addiction to wanting to be almost like be God for other people. I wanted to save other people to the detriment of my own self. And I felt like God finally was like, hey, that's me. By the way, you're not God.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you got that memo, but you're not. You're actually a human and I love you and I want to use you, but you are not me.
Yeah.
And you need to, and I think, it's interesting because we talk about this with our 8-year-old. We have 3 kids and we talk about this with our 8-year-old, that we realized we were teaching her so much to be kind. We forgot to teach her that she's just as valuable and she needs to be kind to herself.
Yes.
And she's allowed to put up boundaries. And I think what I love about this song and the realization is that I truly, really thought my goal in life is to let everybody know they're not alone and that they're loved. But the problem was that I wasn't letting myself believe that. And I think in keeping my mind on the running away, if I'm being really honest, I kept running away to help other people because I didn't want to deal with the fact that I was really broken. And
wow. Yeah. I associate with a lot of that. And one time I was in spiritual direction and the priest said, you know, Jesus says to love your neighbor as yourself. How can you do that if you don't love yourself? And that's not selfish to set up boundaries. And in fact, it's an act of love to not let that person abuse you and use you, because you're keeping them from sinning. You're keeping them from doing that not only hurts you, but hurts them. So it's actually an act of love for them and for yourself to set up these proper boundaries and you know, teach other people how to love by saying no in certain situations. And that was like a revelation to me. And I think very, very much, you know, my parents were like, you know, think about how this will affect other people and, you know, think about how that would make you feel, you know, and empathy. And that's great. We should teach that to our kids. But one of the most powerful moments was when my dad in high school, there was kind of a situation where I was in with a girl where I think I was going overboard and just trying to do everything for her and kind of bending over backwards in a way that was unfair to me. And my dad was like, you know, it's okay to say no. It's okay to, you don't have to like crush yourself. You don't have to crush yourself to like, for the sake of somebody else's insecurities. And that was such a powerful moment when my dad taught me like to set up boundaries.
And what a gift, right? Like, I think the other thing that can be, look, God can use anything, but also Satan can use anything. Oh yeah. Right? Okay. And so our love of other people, Satan's like, oh, really? Okay. I'm so excited about this. Now I'm going to use this. You know, and I think that's why I think the humility aspect and seeing my pride and my pride came out of, I was so hurt. I didn't want anybody else to be hurt. But then it became, I am God. Right. Right. And my humility because you see these martyrs. I mean, we're given these saints and we're given these martyrs and we think we're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. And the humility of asking for help and asking for clarity and direction, and obviously in a prayer life, but also from somebody who has an objective outside perspective, like your dad. And your dad's not in that relationship. Yeah. Your dad could help you create healthy boundaries. And sometimes it is a parent, and sometimes it's the parent that you need to create healthy boundaries with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very
humility,
good. Humility. Yeah, very good, very good. All right, so let's. I want to get into what I think is like her most quintessentially crushed song. Again, this is from Waitress, and we're going to talk about things other than Waitress, but I wanted to start with this. She Used to Be Mine. And so this is I haven't seen the show, but maybe you could kind of give us some context for where this happens in the show and like kind of what's going on in the song.
So essentially, there's a movie, Waitress, and then that movie got turned into the musical. So essentially, she's in an abusive relationship, and she is it's emotionally and physically abusive, and she's pregnant, and she goes to go to this doctor because she's pregnant, and she doesn't want the baby because the baby reminds her of all the abuse. Yeah, and she goes to the doctor, but she's like, fine, okay. It's almost like, fine, okay, I'm pregnant, like what else? And she's this incredible baker, and she works in this bakery, and she's just such a love, but she's let herself be beaten down by this emotionally and physically abusive relationship. And I think also just herself, you know, going back to, she doesn't love herself. Yeah. And she and this doctor have end up having this affair that in a lot of ways is mirroring unconditional love, but in a really twisted and disordered way. Yeah. And so this is actually, she's kind of singing to her baby, and she's singing like, who have I become? Most days I don't recognize me. She's an apron, this place. She's working this, what she believes to, it's like, I was so talented. I was such a loving person, and I've just been really beaten down by this relationship and by life. Yeah, I'm not even sure who I am anymore. So this song is hard for me to listen to it without like tearing up because of the connection it has to me and my wife, and my wife has never wanted this story to be public, but when I told her I was going to be talking about this song, she was like, I think it's time to share this story. So this is something that's never been shared publicly before. So thank you to my dear wife Maddie for because I think her story will mean a lot for some people who have gone through similar things. It's like this song in a lot of ways is her story,
So when she was 19, she was putting herself through college by working as a waitress at PF Chang's, which is kind of hilarious. Yeah. And she maybe not some of the best friends she was hanging out with, and she went to a party, drank too much, went too far with a guy one night that she didn't intend to, and wound up pregnant at the age of 19, putting herself through college as a waitress, and made the very brave choice to give her daughter up for adoption. Found a family and was able to provide a daughter for this family. And she was always, she'd kind of struggled a bit in college, like figuring out her way. She was going to be a music education major. Then she was going to go into business. And so she was like 2 classes shy of her business degree when this happened. And she had always like hated blood. She had always like, anytime she had to get her blood taken, she would like pass out. But she was in the hospital, and like the witness of love and care from the nurses just like was this watershed moment for her. And like after that, like it was this crushed moment for her. But again, like a phoenix from the ashes, like this helped her draw closer to God. She was like, well, I was pregnant. I was going to daily mass every day. I was praying, had a spiritual director. Like it was like this moment where God was really working on her soul. And she discerned, like, I'm called to be a nurse. And she like stopped her business degree, went and got all her science prereqs, which she hadn't done any of because she was like a business and a music major. All of a sudden she's taking like anatomy and physiology and chemistry, and like crushed those classes, and then went through nursing school, and like now she's a pediatric nurse practitioner. Like she's a rock star working in the ER, and like it's just amazing to me like how this story connects so well with her, that she was able to rise from that through God's grace. So
thank you for sharing that. That is so beautiful. And I just want to hit on 2 notes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm an adoptive parent. I'm a foster and adoptive parent.
Okay.
And I love that your wife is we call our, can you hear me by the way?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, cool. I love that your wife is we call our son's first mama. That's what we call him.
Oh.
We call her. But I want to say one thing, because if there's any adoptees listening, we want to start using the term placing.
Placing, okay.
Your wife placed. The only reason I say that is because your wife didn't give up anything.
Oh, okay.
Your wife placed her child.
Yeah.
And that is always her child. And how sweet and beautiful. And I don't know if it's open or closed or whatever, but wow, that's just incredible. And thank you for sharing that story, because that's, as someone in the adoption community, adoption is loss.
Yeah.
And it is every which way. It's a loss for the child, it's a loss for the adoptive family, and it's a loss for the child. And, we create a triad, and all 3 are really, really important.
That's awesome.
And so I just want to speak to that, and speak to anybody who is listening, who is a first parent or is an adoptee, that, what an incredible story. And I think it goes back to the redemption, right? Like that's what's so beautiful about your wife's story and about every crushed moment, is that God, there's no plan A, plan B, plan C, God is constantly writing your story with you. And I think if we just let him, if we surrender to the fact that we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to do things that we wish we could say, I really wish I could take that back. Yeah. But ultimately we have to accept that that's not a choice, but what's our next step? And I think our next step is the surrender. And that's so hard to get to. And just wow, to your wife, that those moments of her being in the hospital and be loved so well by these nurses, and what that gift created is just so, so, so beautiful. And that there's a little person out there who probably may not be a little person anymore, maybe a big person. Yeah. But so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you to Maddie. I love that, like the difference between, that's just something we say, is they gave them up for adoption, but like the placing, like that's such a, I love the way you phrase that. That's great. It goes to, and before they've even, if a woman is just thinking about placing, and she's thinking about a plan, and she's an expectant mother. She's not a birth mother. You don't become a birth mother or birth father until that placement is taken place. And
And I think what's really important about that, especially in the pro-life discussion, is that, and the whole life, I want to say the whole life discussion, is that these women that are going through this decision deserve all the love and care and support, because there are women that want to parent that are told you don't have X, Y, and Z, whether it's finances or whatever, and so you shouldn't. And so there's this narrative that is all about these adoptive parents that are swooping in and saving, and it's like, wait.
Yeah.
You know, like nobody's like, your wife is such an incredible woman that made this plan and that placed her child. And so I just want to speak to that, because I think sometimes it is all about the adoptive parents.
Yeah. Thank you for that perspective. I'd never thought about it that way. That's really beautiful. I'm going to geek out for just a moment on the musicality of this song, because she does some really cool things here just with the chord structure. Is so the chord progression is like really simple at first. You're not what I asked for, and if I'm honest, but then it goes to like this weird major 3 chord. So anyway, the way the chord progression would normally go is the 1 chord, the 5 chord, the 6 chord, the 4 chord, and there's like a million pop songs that do that. But halfway through the song, she switches it from the 1 to the 5 chord and it's like all of a sudden there's this little blues tension in the middle of it, and that's just such good writing from Sara Bareilles. And again, I was talking about how the melody from chorus to chorus changes. Like the first chorus is like pretty sweet, and then the second chorus is like, who'd be reckless just enough, who gets hurt but who learns how to toughen up when she's bruised and gets used by men who can love. It's just like got a lot more power and a little more grit to it. And then she'll get stuck and be scared of the life that's inside her, growing stronger each day till it finally reminds her to fight back a little and bring back the fire in her eyes that's been gone but used to be mine. And it's just she has such a musicality the way it ramps up, and then that chord in the middle, it just right in the feelings. So anyway, I love it. So so good.
I'm just laughing because I love that this is what you geek out on, because I geek out on the lyrics. I geek out on the storytelling, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so good.
Yeah, so. And she's got all of that going on. So all right,
you know Rent, right?
Yeah. We'll do that episode at some point.
So much like Roger, it's crazy.
Yeah, I get that a lot. And if I was ever to like,
and I was like, oh, it's 1997 again. Yes. And I'm going to City One Side for $20 tickets for Rent.
I get that a lot, and if I ever like went back to theater, I would like probably try to audition for Roger somewhere. I definitely get that a lot. So yeah, thank you. All right, so all right, where are we going next? I wanted to talk about some of her, man, I'm like a little emotionally frazzled at this point.
I know that was a lot.
I'm doing okay. I'm holding it together. I'm just like, man, I have these moments where I'm just like in awe of my wife and like the woman she is and how awesome she is. And, you know, not that she doesn't have flaws and we don't have issues sometimes, and not that we have a perfect marriage, but she's just, I don't know. She's awesome, and I'm so in love with her, and just she's an amazing person.
Can I stop for a second? Because I think for the men and the women that are, I think your demographic is younger, right? I think it's younger.
I'm not really sure what my demographic is.
Okay, well, people that are listening, I'm going to throw this out there.
Yeah.
I think what I love about this is the transparency that you and your wife have. And that is and that's what Sara talks about. She talks about honesty, and she lets herself be vulnerable, and vulnerable is really just letting people see you.
Yeah.
And I think what's so beautiful about this is you're allowing people right now to see inside in a boundary way of what makes your marriage so beautiful with your wife, and how marriage can grow people closer to heaven. And so, yeah, it's so like my show's all about getting emotional. So
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So what I want to talk about next is kind of a few different songs that have to do with relationships that like are hard and maybe they don't work out. So I'm thinking of songs like Gravity, Hold My Heart, Undertow, which I know is one of your favorites. So in Fairy Tale, So I know for me, I dated a lot, probably too much through my college years and into my 20s. And so like breakup songs, like it's why I love Taylor Swift. It's why I love Usher. It's why I love Maroon 5. It's just like speaks to my heart. And it's why I love Sara Bareilles. She has like such good breakup songs. And so like, do you have a favorite kind of like troubled love song from her?
I mean, first of all, I wrote a show called Why Is It That the Boys You Like Never Like You Back? I dated a lot. And also I wanted to date a lot more and they weren't liking me.
Yeah.
I think my favorite is probably, honestly, it goes hand in hand, Gravity and Undertow. Because I think in so many ways, they're both the same story of the push and the pull and the longing to be with this person, knowing this person isn't right. And the like, just like, it's like you can't get away from this person. And that in that way can be anything that's not great.
Yeah, it doesn't have to
just be a relationship.
Yeah. Something always brings you back to you. It never takes too long, no matter what I can do. Yeah, that's such a beautiful song, Gravity. And we just did an episode on John Mayer a little while ago, and he has a song called Gravity, and just like that idea of
they go hand in hand.
Yeah, this person that just can like pull you in, and it's like you can't get it away from. You can't get away from them. But she's like, one thing I still know is that you're keeping me down, and like I think there's a realization there, because sometimes every relationship is hard. Every romantic relationship is hard, and it's supposed to be hard, and that's where like real love begins. John Paul II, who's right there, he's in one of these pictures. But anyway, he says like the real love of a relationship. What'd you say?
JP squared.
JP squared. I like that. So he has this thing where he says, when two people fall in love, like it's easy at the beginning, right? But then when the real love begins is the first time it gets hard. And that's where the real love begins. And so it's supposed to be hard. You're supposed to work through these things, but it's not supposed to be like at some point, at least before, if you're not married, like there are red flags where you can set up those boundaries and say, well, it's not supposed to be this hard, at least not this early, And I feel like she's kind of coming to that realization by the end of this song is like, I keep coming back to you, but I realize like you're keeping me down, and maybe this isn't what's best for me or even best for you. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the difference between, is it life-giving or is it soul-sucking?
Ooh, okay.
And I think that, relationships, I agree with you that relationships, the hard part to me is what we were just talking about a little while ago, the transparency, the honesty, the communication, the law. You're going to probably during this marriage, you're going to lose parents. You could lose a child. You could lose, there's so many different things in a relationship. You lose a job, have to move. Like there's huge things that happen within a marriage and a lifetime. The one thing that shouldn't be the issue is, do we like each other or not? Do we want to spend time with each other? Are we good for each other? And yes, we will go through seasons of probably liking each other more than other. But I think that's the like grounding, the root. And I think I would look at these things of like relationships are supposed to be hard. And my husband and I talk about this a lot because he dated a lot less than I did. But I remember him talking about, he would like fight for these relationships, very similar to what you were talking about in your high school, what your dad said. Like he would kind of contort himself to be what these girls wanted. And I did the same thing. And instead of just being authentically like, this is who I am. And unfortunately, that's what I did with my ex-fiance. And he was like, yeah, I don't want that. And that was why it was so crushing, because the other relationships I had kind of contorted myself and lied to myself and taken parts of myself away, especially a lot of times my spirituality. And with my ex-fiance, I hadn't. And so for him to turn his back on me was the worst thing that could possibly happen. Because he was rejecting me to the core, not some version of.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, that's you're kind of blowing my mind right now. The idea that I think also where I was going to go from there is we wanted to talk about fairy tale. And I think a lot of times where this kind of putting too much into a relationship that maybe isn't going to last comes from kind of believing in this fairy tale, believing in all the movies we watch, romantic comedies, Disney movies, whatever it is that, everything is rosy in the end and it's all going to work out. And I think for me, growing up, I feel like in a lot of media, maybe not so much nowadays, but when I was growing up, in any romance, if there were problems, it was pretty much the guy's fault, and he just had to learn not to be such a jerk, and then things would work out in the end. And maybe the girl was like kind of a klutz and kind of a mess, but she wasn't like selfish, you know. It was the guy that was selfish and had to learn not to be selfish. And so I think I kind of grew up with this idea as like, as long as I'm not a selfish jerk, relationships will be easy. And then like as I started dating, I was like, oh, women also can be selfish and like also can be like not virtuous. And I think I had kind of built up this kind of ideal in my mind of the feminine, that like women are perfect and women are always wonderful, and come to realize like they can be just as manipulative and selfish as men are. Then as a man, like I'm not supposed to show my emotions or think about my emotions or have emotional needs. So I'm not supposed to like bring these things up or care about these things, or God forbid I would ever cry or get upset, unless I'm allowed to get mad, but I'm not allowed to get any of those other things. And so that was a realization for me as well, to kind of break these fairy tale stereotypes that our media and just our culture kind of has impressed upon us as men and women in relationships. So I don't know. Have you had experience with that?
Oh my goodness. It's so funny because we actually this week, I know this will air later, but this week we're dropping an episode about romantic comedies and the kind of the detriment of them, but also the beauty of them and the goodness of them, and how one of the best things about romantic comedies is I feel like we don't dissect them enough.
Yeah.
As human beings in relationship, we should dissect them. I mean, my mom used to have very special episodes of TV shows, and we would like, oh my gosh, I don't play hide and seek in a refrigerator because of Punky Brewster. Like, I won't smoke because Jodie Sweetin. I mean, like everything was a very special episode and everything. But I think we should be doing that with romantic comedies and fairy tales. And ultimately, the goodness of this is that it's the story of salvation. We want the happily ever after. We're all longing for it. I think C.S. Lewis says something like, the reason maybe this world doesn't. I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. Sorry, C.S. But like maybe this world doesn't satisfy because we weren't made for this world. So ultimately, we do want the happily ever after. But like. Happily ever after is not going to happen here, but we'll get glimpses of it, right? On earth as it is in heaven. Yes. But I think what happens is, and I actually say this in our romantic comedy episode, like I don't care about the first kiss of the Hallmark movie or Miss Congeniality. I don't care about the proposal at The Bachelor. I want the 3 months when they're trying to figure out how to make it work after they've been on hot air balloons in The Bachelor. I don't even watch The Bachelor. But like, I want after that first kiss, what is actually happening? That's the real goodness. That's going back to all of that. But I think what happens is we have to just deconstruct these ideas. And it's funny what you got out of romantic comedies, because I got out of romantic comedies. Real love is when a guy changes for you. Oh, okay. Like, and that's what Crushed was all about. My one woman show is that I kept going after these players because I was like, oh my gosh, like, I mean, very Grease. And wait, what's the one? Walk to Remember, which is not a romantic comedy, but it's this, whatever, this pious virgin girl and this like rock star, guy, and oh my gosh, and she has the glow up moment on stage where she's so beautiful, and then she goes back to being plain. And I was bullied and awkward kid, and I had like a bowl cut. It was rough, but I wanted that, and I thought real love was when a guy changed for you. Wow. And my husband and I went out, and I thought he was so great. We met in improv. He was so funny. And then we went on the first date and he was too nice. And I was like, I'm not attracted to that. And I ghosted him, and we didn't talk for like 3 years. Wow. And I dated a jerk, and he cheated on me. And, but I really thought, because of the people in my life and the stories that I watched on television, that right what you said, if a guy stops being selfish, if he stops playing women, and you finally realize, I want to change for this woman, then that means the woman is worth it. And that's what I was looking for. Going back to, I didn't believe I mattered. So I was constantly like, if I can just prove my worth through this guy changing for me, then I'll matter. If I can just prove my worth through my fame, and then everybody will know, and then I'll know. Wow. And so it's all interrelated of just, I didn't know my value. I didn't know my identity. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I that's that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people associate with that. And again, from like the guy's perspective, there's also lots of movies where it's like the guy saves the girl, and so like I feel like a lot of times my kryptonite in dating, when a girl was like just crazy enough to need some saving, like just broken enough to need some saving, and like I was like, well, she just needs a big strong man like me to save her and like show her stability and love, and then things will be all right. And like, no, that's
that's not that. First of all, like, what a twisted, messed up perspective from me, but also like, it's just, yeah, it's not good. So I agree. And that's part of what we hope to do in this show is break apart those things from media and separate the good from the bad, because those are the stories we tell ourselves and those are the things we tell ourselves. So.
And here's the thing, as a writer, as a comedy writer, and as a writer in general, a character has to have somewhere to go. They have to grow. So that's why you're seeing these guys be players and then they become these like, good men, whatever.
Yeah.
That's why you're seeing it. But the problem is then you contort that in your mind to be, or at least I did. I can't speak for anybody else. And so it's almost like you want to also break apart the story. Why are they doing this? Why are they like, they're selling a product ultimately. But my husband, by the way, and one of our dearest friends who got married a couple years ago, but they both had that putting women on pedestals, like, oh, I have to protect them, or like they need a bit, I can't hurt them, and like they're so perfect, and spoiler alert, we're not.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. Last thing I want to talk about is Sara also has a number of songs that are kind of like strong, independent women. Like I think of, I'm Not Gonna Write You a Love Song, directed at her record label, like kind of standing up to her record label. Brave, of course, like, you gotta say what you want to say. King of Anything, about this guy who's kind of trying to direct her life. And she's like, look, I don't need saving. And there's this moment in King of Anything specifically, that just, it hits me every time. It's like, all my life I've tried to make everybody happy while I just hurt and hide, waiting for someone to tell me it's my turn to decide. And that idea that, I think everybody can struggle with this, but I think I've seen, especially in like female friends and family members and a lot of the students I've worked with, this kind of implicit idea for women that like they're not supposed to speak up, just people please. And it's a real moment of growth for many women and a moment of maturity to realize like, I don't need to people please, even if people are going to call me a B word. Like I need to like self-advocate and set those boundaries. And anyway, I was curious from a woman's perspective, if that connected with you, if you have anything to say about that.
Okay. So a lot of things, I think one, and I mean, I know you're in the arts as well, but being a woman that is in a visual medium is, I did an interview for the Today Show a while back, and we were talking about aging, and I was talking about getting back into the business and stuff. And it was interesting to have so many different women talk about aging and everything, but we are constantly picked apart.
Yeah.
And that is our value, and our worth is our beauty.
Wow.
Just like a man's value and worth is what he can provide in his money. Yeah. I'm not saying those are true statements, but I'm saying that's what romantic comedies and everything, the media tells us. Yeah. And so I've talked about this a ton on my podcast, and especially on my episode, our very special episode where I talk about my 2 crush moments. As an actress, I was constantly told, you're not pretty enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not pretty enough. Wow. To my face. This wasn't a like, ooh, maybe. And I remember one of my first big auditions was for a USA show called the 4400. It was one of the leads, and I went in and I killed it. I mean, I was crying. It was amazing. I even remember getting hit on in the waiting room by a really cute guy. And I was like, no, dude, no. Which I was really proud of myself. Yeah. Because I wasn't like, oh, please, cute boy, give me a second. And I killed it. And then I went in, and my manager was like, one of my managers was like, they loved you. They thought you were the best read. They really wanted to bring you producers, but you're just not pretty enough. They didn't feel you were pretty enough to bring producers.
Oh my God.
That got stamped on me. And I wish I could tell you that I would have been 23. My gosh. That followed me. I'm 40. And I'm just getting healed from that in the last year and a half. And I walked into every room thinking I needed to prove to them that I could be there, because obviously I needed to apologize for not being pretty enough. I needed to apologize for not being what they needed, but don't worry, because I'm going to prove to you my talent's really great. I'm really funny, or really, I'll pull at your heartstrings, whatever. Wow. And Sara talks about in a lot of those songs, when a lot of women and a lot of people, there's a buzzword of the patriarchy, right? And feminism, and there's a lot of buzzwords around there. And I think what happens is they get put in a camp and people don't actually hear. We forget to listen. It affects us. It affects our wounds, right? And we're like, no, stop talking. Or we're like, yeah, keep talking. And instead of really listening to what's really being said, and I think ultimately she's saying these are for the people that just had something to say. They had a comment about everything. I never invited them in. I never said, hey, please tell me about my nose, or tell me about my weight, or tell me about my hair, or tell me about how I'm coming across that you don't like. And I think ultimately, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or actually, being in the public eye, we are all subjected to that. And especially as women, when that is our currency, or at least that's how the world values us, it is an incredibly hard thing to deconstruct that and figure out what is our value and our worth. And, I went on a retreat, the Life Teen Women's Retreat, like a year and a half ago. I think it was 2019. I think it was like 2019. And that was the moment that God really pierced me and was like, you have been carrying this around. Your identity has been, you're not pretty enough. And it honestly, it didn't start there, right? It starts way back.
Yeah.
So it started way, way back as a child with deep childhood wounds, with, family and friends and bullies and stuff. So I think what's so great about Sara is she's so honest. Like in interviews, she'll be like, I guess I'm not over that. But also what's so great about her is she says things like, I had to make an active choice to fall in love with my nose. And I think we have to make active choices to ask God, hey, God, what am I not seeing?
Yeah.
And we need to ask the Holy Spirit in those moments too. Hey, God, where am I really wounded? And where am I not even realizing I'm bleeding?
Yeah.
I am the woman that was bleeding for 12 years, except I was bleeding for a heck of a lot longer. I was hemorrhaging. And because of my hemorrhaging, I was also hemorrhaging over everybody else without even realizing it.
Oh my gosh.
I was so wounded and hurt. And I went into LA and acting for all the right reasons, but for all the wrong reasons too. I went in because I wanted to create content that was funny and worth it and valuable and sharp. But I also went in there because I wanted to prove myself.
Yeah. Love me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many of us, everybody wants the Susan Boyle moment. Everybody wants the moment. And we talk about this on one of our episodes where you walk on stage and everybody's like, I'm writing that. Who's this woman? Why is she talking? And then she's funny and they still mock her. And then she opens her mouth and she sings and she proves her value. And then everybody's obsessed with her.
Yeah.
And everybody wants that moment.
Yeah.
But the moment before is that she already was worth something.
Yes.
Whether she sang or didn't, she was already worth something. But that is a incredibly hard thing, especially as a woman, to believe that we are valued and worth and our identity is in Christ and we are chosen. That is so hard to believe when every single thing in the media is telling us that's not true.
Wow. I'm glad we're recording what you just said, because I'm gonna listen back to that. And there's I know I need to hear that as a man, but I know there's definitely women watching and listening right now. I have a tear rolling down my cheek, by the way. And that are going to benefit from what you just said. Yeah, man, I was just going to say that image about hemorrhaging, I've never connected the story in that way, but that's beautiful. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to say something, and I'm going to get emotional, but this is hard fought and hard won. We talk a lot on Crush about healing. Healing sucks, guys. It sucks. I don't want to pretend it's this rainbows and unicorns of I'm going to just, speak my truth and I'm going to be okay. It's not. And the only way this is going to happen is if we allow Christ to press on our wounds. And the only way this is going to happen is if we allow those wounds in a safe place to be gently and slowly exposed. And I think what we're seeing right now is so many people are just crying children having temper tantrums because nobody hugged them.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a funny way, but I do as well. Like, it's like, who hurt you?
Yeah.
Seriously, you know? And I'll be the first one to say, a lot of people hurt me, and I also hurt myself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my spiritual director, when we were talking about it, so I went in to speak with him, and it ended up being, that was the gospel reading of the day, was the hemorrhaging woman. And he said, the first thing he says to her, I believe, is daughter. And because of my childhood wounds, I had never been a daughter. Wow. I was always a mother and a big sister to everybody else. And I feel like God has been saying to me, and I think there are women and men that are listening that, like, they were never got to be kids. And that there's so much about that then speaks to the choices that you make, because you have to, like, you feel like you have to take care of yourself and everybody around you.
Wow. I'm like weeping right now. That is so beautiful. Wow. There's been like 4 times this episode. Normally I'm like ready to come in with a retort and like, or like a response, and like, I just am speechless. Thank you so much, Kiersten, for your wisdom and your vulnerability, and just you're willing to share with us today. On a less serious note, let's pray first, because I feel like we're in a moment where I need to pray. Would you close us in a prayer?
Yeah.
Awesome.
In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, I just want to ask for the intercession of, I'm going to maybe pronounce her name wrong right now, but Saint Louise de Marillac. She was somebody who was crushed over and over and over again, God. And I think sometimes we forget that we are worthy to say out loud that we've been crushed. And we want to pass it off and just pretend it's not happening or push it aside because we need to love and serve other people. And I think right now, and what Sara talks about, is sticking up for yourself and loving yourself so that you can love other people. And God, I just want to pray for everybody that's listening right now, that they know that they are worthy and they are chosen. And they were chosen before they ever sang a note or cracked a joke or looked in the mirror or cried. They were chosen, and you are chosen, each one of you that's listening. And you are so beloved, and you are a daughter and a son of God. And so we thank you, God, for this conversation. We thank you that we were able to talk about so many different things. And most importantly, we thank you, Son of God, for healing our wounds and binding our wounds, and also doing it gently. Please do it gently. It's really hard work. And we ask this just all in Christ's name. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Yay, Jesus.
Yay, Jesus. Kiersten, thank you so much for just cracking open our hearts in the gospel and in your own heart and putting it on display for us so that we can share in a little bit of the healing that God has brought through you. So thank you to all our viewers. If you were as moved by this episode as I was, please find someone to share it with. Like us on Facebook and in YouTube, and subscribe, and send a screenshot to somebody in a box of tissues as well. And also, if you really want to support this show and keep the cameras running and the lights on, you can become a patron by going to popculturecatechism.com and choose a giving level. There's 1 to 6 levels with perks for each one, and you get access to exclusive content. After this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Sara's best love song. And you can get access to all that through the Awaken app, which is free for everyone. And there's lots of free content, a music library, a prayer library, Catholic Christian community, and then access to all the shows. And then if you're a patron, access to lots of exclusive content as well. Thank you, viewers and listeners, for being with us today. Sorry if I sniveled and dripped into the mic. We love you. Jesus loves you more. Bye. Real quick, I need to give a very special thank you to our patrons who support this show and make it possible, especially Troy, Henry, Carlin, Melissa Gore, Lisa and Bob Tenney, Steve and Maggie Hubbard, Rob Smith, Tom and Emily Camberiotti, and to all our patrons who give generously. Thank you so much, and make sure you check out the exclusive content in the app. Thank you, and Merry Christmas to all of you.